What up? Welcome to No Bad Vibes TV, and it's me, Chris the Enlightened. And you know what? Right now, I'm actually going to talk about one specific thing right now, and that is my book slash memoir, Boom, The Life and Times of a Suicide Near-Death Experiencer. And, basically, for those that don't know who I am, I'm Chris the Enlightened, aka Chris NDE. I actually had a near-death experience a few years ago. Met my guardian angels, the whole nine. Have videos that talk about a lot of stuff that I learned from spiritual growth and life after my near-death experience. I even have videos talking about my near-death experience. That's for those that don't know who I am. For the people that do know who I am, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with my book slash memoir, which is, true story about my life, my memoir. So, basically, I just want to sort of go over a few chapters in this book so I can, I guess, persuade you guys to read this book. Basically, the reason I want to promote this book a lot is because I'm a suicide survivor, and I actually, like most of you know, I tried to commit suicide years ago. That's how I had my near-death experience. So, in this book, I'm hoping to reach as many people as I can, that are people that are suicidal and people that are down on themselves, and I want them to know my story as well as I want you all to know my story, and the progression that I had, after my near-death experience. So let's see. Let's go on the table of contents here. A little table of contents. I'm gonna go over a few of the chapters, or shall I say, I'm gonna sort of go over all the chapters. Being from nowhere doesn't count. That chapter is basically talking about I had an event happen when I was 15, and I got shot at for the first time, and that's basically, I was talking about that. Being from nowhere doesn't count. Yeah. Beginnings. That just basically, I like how my editor and my a lot of other supporters of my book, they actually had a good idea to sort of blend in. And actually, the person who endorsed my book, Tricia Barker, she's the author of Angels in the OR. Most of you are familiar with her. She had a near-death experience as well. But yeah, Tricia Barker actually had an idea in one of her workshops that my editor just blend in the first two chapters. So she's saying that being from nowhere doesn't count. She's gonna start off with something like huge, like something one of the most impactful things that has happened to me, which that is the time I got shot at 15. So yeah, so they blended it in. So that's the first chapter. Second just takes you to the very beginning of everything. That's the second chapter, beginnings. Basically talks about my struggles as a child, living from home to person, and it breaks down a lot of the reasons why I was depressed and suicidal years down the road. Third chapter, chapter 3, Uncle Rabbit. That is someone who I spoke of in chapter 2. He's a very important person in my life. He was one of my aunts. One of my aunts I spoke of in this book. He was her friend. Her friend, I'm sorry. He was her husband, and yeah, pretty much, he loved me like she didn't. He loved me like anybody else, couldn't. He did. He just loved me. He loved me like his own, and I wasn't even his own. Only reason I was related to him is because my aunt was married to him. He was the best person I've ever met, but he passed away, and my book tells you when and how. Chapter 4, starting high school with Aunt Sarah. So basically, that's a part where I left one of my houses, and basically Uncle Rabbit, Aunt Sarah is his wife, basically. And yeah, so that talks about that, and that talks about my relationship with her. That chapter strictly talks about my relationship with my Aunt Sarah and how she's become so important to this book as well. Let me see, chapter 5, standing up for myself, high school, had a lot of problems with a lot of bullies. I was never one to say no. I was always one to not back down. I was always the first one to say, well, meet me outside after school, you punk. That was me. And when I would get bullied, I would always stand up for myself. So that's what that chapter's for. Standing up for yourself. Chapter 6, popularity. That chapter right there is basically like, that just basically talks about how I had a pretty popular high school experience. I was very, very, very popular, especially my junior, senior year. I was very, very, 10th grade, I was very, very, very popular. A lot of people knew me, and that's just basically, that talks about good times I had with my friends. That talks about, let me actually look that up right now. Popularity, I'll read something quick from there. Let me see. I didn't feel depressed or suicidal. There was no time for that. I felt the point of life was to be popular and to be loved by people in school, and I have achieved this. As a result, I had no privacy, no alone time, and no thoughts about anything beyond the next exciting event. Someone was always around, calling or wanted to hang out. So basically, I talk about how, just read it. Yeah, I talk about how it was very popular, but with that, you don't really get privacy. Everybody wants to hang out with you. Everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody wants you to hook them up with the next girl and stuff like that. Let's see, chapter 7, the missing money. Pretty much that talks about how one of my experience with a previous person that one of my previous homes that I lived in, they stole my money. That chapter talks about that. Chapter 8, the Potter's Convenient House. That basically talks about basically a church that I went to, and I had a lot of questions about religion. And let me see, Potter's Convenient House, where is it? Potter's Convenient House. Let me see. So yeah, I had a lot of religious questions back then, and this was I've been to a lot of churches, and I was always trying to put the truth together, Christian churches versus Catholic churches, and Christian have so many churches, many denominations in it. Like there's Christian, there's Pentecostal, there's all types of other types of Christian. This is one of the Christian churches that I've been to, and they always said I was gonna like burn in hell because and my other friends, that we weren't like them, we weren't saved, and that's basically talks about my experience. I actually let me see. After church, I asked the pastor questions. Why do you say we can't kill people but kill animals to eat? That's weird. I said, why does the Bible say thou shalt not kill, but there is supposed to be an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth? How do we really know this was the real church when there were so many? And that basically that chapter breaks down my questions I had about religion, because so many of them that I've been in, and it seemed like I was disappointed in so many. Let's see, because they would never accept me. They would never like truly accept me. I had to be like them. If I had questions, they shunned me straight to hell. You're going to hell. Don't question God. They always told me that. Like the pastors and the deacons and all the pastors' wives. Oh, Chris, you better get saved now. Okay. Let's see. Chapter 9 is called Drop It Like It's Hot. Me and my editor originally she had an idea. She was going to call it Drop It Like It's Shot. And that's because I talked about an experience I had in high school, and it was a house party, and that's where the house party got shot. Mind you, I grew up in a crazy neighborhood, so a lot of the parties got shot up a lot of the times, like bang, bang, guns, shot. And at that party, I remember this was my junior year, and we were listening to Snoop Dogg's Drop It Like It's Hot, and that's when the song came on, and before you know it, boom, 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 there were gunshots as people were dancing to one of Snoop Dogg's songs, Drop It Like It's Hot. And that chapter talks about that. Let me see, chapter 12, breakup. That basically ends up talking about a relationship I had. And I actually, as a result of this relationship, I have a son with her. So that that chapter, happiness, was a time in my life I thought I was happy, but it wasn't. I wasn't happy. But anyway, so yeah, that talks about that relationship and how the relationship, how we even had a son to begin with. How was our relationship after? I talk about that too in that chapter. Let's see, chapter 12, breakup. Obvious, the person I'm talking about in the last chapter, happiness, talks about breakup, how we broke up. Chapter 13, anxiety and addiction, basically talks about a lot of pills, liquor, drugs, all types of stuff I've tried throughout my life, like being my a lot of my addictions that came from being so depressed and so suicidal, and feeling alone. That's what that chapter talks about. Chapter 14, anything goes. It talks about one of the most toxic relationships I ever had with someone in the book, Katrina, and they were someone that was very impactful in my life. They took me from like basically the hood to the good neighborhood, if you will. And let me see. That talks about our relationship. Chapter 15, boom, God. That goes down into my near-death experience. That goes and talks about how I heard from God during my near-death experience. It talks about my actual near-death experience. So I get into detail on what I seen. I talk about the entities that I felt, the voices I've heard. Same thing, chapter 16, boom, angels. Angels, that talks about how I met my guardian angels, which I talk about them in most of my videos, my guardian angels. So this is like the start of the beginning of the relationship between me and my guardian angels. So that chapter talks about that. Chapter 17, discoveries. Certain things I've discovered throughout my life, like my 7 chakra centers and, spiritual centers that you have and stuff that my own guardian angels have taught me. Again, to detail it, like in exactly what they have told me to look out for. I pay attention to the trees and the plants and everything. Pay attention. That's chapter 18. That's what that chapter is talking about. Paying attention to everything. Paying attention to like the trees, the plants, the animals, the water. There's God's presence in the water, believe it or not. Chapter 19, discernment. I gained the discernment to be able to tell the true intentions of people, which is called a discernment. So that's what that's called, discernment. And that chapter talks about exactly what I can discern. Chapter 20, life as an indie ear, pretty self-explanatory. It explains life after my near-death experience. How has life changed? How was life because we talked about life before already. And I appreciate all the proofreaders who were reading it, the test readers, and everybody that was asking questions during the writing of this book. What is life after the near-death experience? So I appreciate that. So that completed the book. So yeah, that chapter talks about life after my near-death experience. Like how is it being a near-death experiencer? How do you see the world? How do you see people? How do you see things? And how do you see religion and spirituality? And it talks about this in this book. Absolutely, last chapter is forgiveness. Basically, I ended up, after getting this discernment and all these, good, like angels and this spiritual enlightenment, I had to forgive a lot of people before I could move on with my life. That's exactly what I did. I forgave a lot of people who've wronged me. I've been done wrong a lot in my life. So this chapter is very important to me because I forgave a lot of people. So this kind of made this point in my life where I forgave everybody. It's when I was basically comfortable with my spirituality. So yeah, that's basically the life and times of a near-death experiencer. It's available on Amazon and Kindle. Also, I will leave a link in the description down there, and just click on it. And if you know someone who's suicidal, if you know someone who can use a motivational book like this, I would suggest this book. And not to mention, like I said, it mentions Tricia Barker, the Angels in the OR, and I will leave a link to her book as well if you do not have it. And that's pretty much it for now. All my fans, I love my fans. Oh my God, am I stupid? Not my fans, but family. family. I love y'all and appreciate y'all. Stay weird, stay different. Stay weird again. And pretty much, it's no bad vibes. It's all love. No bad vibes. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Killing it.